Ladies and gentlemen, hello. Happy post-Halloween, or as we say in our house, Merry Christmas.
The worst time of... Oh, sorry.
I want to hear all about it because you had kind of an epic... So I want to hear about the costume. I want to hear about the celebration. And then I want to hear about the post-Halloween trip to Las Vegas. So just fire away. This is Stafford's favorite time of year. And you know, like now we get into lights and positivity and hope and sentimentality, and Tim is totally depressed.
Well, first of all, let me push back on all of that.
Oh.
You know what I thought about when I was walking around trick-or-treating? So every year we open up our house and we have 3 big pots of chili. And people bring extra stuff, and we have we probably had 60, 70 people here. I mean, of full families.
With one working bathroom, which is...
That's correct.
Awesome. And chili. Just let that sink in.
And then we just we leave from our house and we trick-or-treat our neighborhood. So it's magical.
Yeah.
And then I was walking around and I was just like, how rad is this holiday? All these adults get dressed up in their houses. They're so positive. They get candy. They decorate a little bit. They wait for kids to come up. They're kind. They're generous with their time and with the kids. I was like, this is such a positive holiday. The kids love it. The kids are having a blast. The neighborhood engages each other. It's very communal. Christmas is not that way.
What better way to worship Satan than that way? Yes.
Well, he's a communal dude. But yeah, we had a lot of fun. I was a werewolf.
Of course.
My costume freaked some people out, including my mom when she showed up, and because I guess they couldn't tell it was me.
Well, I mean, that's a good costume then, right?
Yeah. My son Elliot was Albert Einstein because he always picks something random every year. And so we got him a bushy mustache and painted his hair.
Nice. What was Shauna?
Shauna was Crookshanks, who is Hermione Granger's cat from Harry Potter. Because Mazzy was
if
Hermione.
you have to explain it, then you're not worthy to explain it to.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And then we got up early the next morning and flew to Vegas for
just you and Shauna, just not
me
the
and
fam.
Shauna, and then our 2 of our really good friends, and we flew down to go see you 2 at the Sphere.
Yeah.
Wild, quick trip. Got there, got to our hotel, and then had to head straight to the venue. And then they got up at 4 a.m. and flew home because they had to go to work. And so, but it was an under 24-hour trip.
Wow.
The Sphere, I cannot describe.
Yeah.
It's just unreal. But I had some very wonderful moments in there. It was very profound. I think I cried twice.
Yes. There it is.
It's really intense.
This is the
crazy.
Sphere in Las Vegas, right? So this was the U2 show.
And it's so that you can see it from the plane.
Yeah.
It's hard to understand how big, and then what it's like inside when that screen starts going is just bananas.
Yeah. It
was very fun.
What song did you cry to? Or was it more the visual, or it was the combo?
It was both. Yeah. Early on when he was saying one, ever since we did our little U2 thing, Gambas really drilled into my head. The last lyric on one is that we get to carry each other. It's this really profound, this is what it means to be human together. So it's a privilege to carry one another. And that is just stuck in my head since we
sounds like
it.
Love Your Neighbor right there.
Sure does. And then that's how it is in there. Everybody was just so full of joy and positive and singing. And it was just with so many negative things going on in the world right now, between how nice it was to see Halloween, everyone being so communal, and then all these strangers singing and dancing together. And it felt very, my soul needed a really positive human interaction experience. And I feel like that's what I got this week.
Dude, I love that.
Yeah, it was great.
And what I think I'm going to I don't dress up ever for Halloween because I don't worship the angel of darkness, but
it's not too late for you.
I think I'm going to dress up as the Sphere. You know what I'm saying? Just my bald head.
That would be
and
great.
Just that would be perfect. So
and the outside is a screen too, and it changes.
Yeah.
And so it turns into a big emoji.
That's
emoji.
why I was thinking of the big
man,
yellow
it's so
emoji
crazy.
head. I know. Seriously.
It's really wild.
Bro, I'm so glad you got to experience that. Happy Halloween. Yeah, well done. Seth Erie dressed up as I'm sure we've talked about his little rock star friend who is in a band. It's the kid in high school, is in a band. And they wear these painter like jacket like outfit things, and our friend's mom made Seth one of those for Halloween.
Oh,
so Seth, you don't, yeah. So we do this thing.
What a thoughtful gift.
What a thoughtful, I mean, beyond. And so Seth marched around with his guitar, singing these songs and just going absolutely berserk. Oh my goodness, just so happy. So yeah, that's super fun. And so anyway, I'm glad you had a great time, bro. You could tell you're radiating something today.
Well, it's like, part of it's just haven't slept all week.
That's good. That radiates something for sure.
I also drove to and from Mariposa, which is right outside of Yosemite, for my buddy's birthday. He wanted to fish all day.
Oh my
So we went on the river, and it was there and back 3.5 hours each way, and I got poison oak now. So I went to Vegas with poison oak all over my arms, which is exciting.
So let me get this straight. You had a Halloween 60-person communal celebration. You drove 7 hours to go fishing with a friend. Then you hopped on a plane and did a less than 24-hour trip to Vegas. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, sir.
And you're wondering, or maybe you're not wondering.
I'm not.
If you're tired. Okay.
Just acknowledging.
Man, that's a packed week, my friend.
Yeah.
Excellent work, Stafford. Well done. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you had a blessed Halloween. Can we even put those words together? I don't know. But the Erie household transitions quickly. So Halloween for us is September and October. We put Halloween decorations up like middle of September.
I'm not allowed to until October 1st.
Listen, I understand every family has their constraints. But we're more fall. It's more of a fall decoration than, like pictures of death and skeletons. So, but we got out the Christmas decorations. We're not decorated yet. I know. Listen, if you could see his face, the disgust on his face.
I had to go to Target the day after to pick up some stuff for Vegas, and while I was there, this kid was putting out. They had all their Christmas stuff out. It was the day after, and I was like, dude, what? He's like, oh, man, I know, man. Like, they make me do this right away. I can't believe it. I was like, it's blasphemous. And he's like, yeah, it is. Got all right.
Rock the power. Because I look at Thanksgiving and I'm like, the whole package is beautiful the next several months.
Yeah,
so we just, I love it. Best time of year. So, anyway, I just want you to know, dear Voxology listener, you're getting two holiday extremes on the show. And this is why we're great together, is you get the Lord of Darkness celebration and then the Lord of Light celebration. Right. And you can judge for yourself, which is needed. So anyway, we are going to keep moving. I mean, we're in an uninterrupted stream of goodness, of revelation goodness right now.
That's right.
We're not booking interviews.
Beasts and dragons. And
we're just plowing. Somebody, I don't remember who it was, somebody intimated that we were going slowly through this book, and that fired me up. And so we are now...
So now we're going to slow down even more.
Well, good Lord. Yes. We've done at our church, we've done like 12 weeks on Genesis 1 or something. Maybe it's not 12 weeks, but maybe it's just... like
you
slow.
had a big weekend too. You were in the LBC.
I was in California, guys. Absolutely. A friend of ours named Darren Roundsin, and I spoke at their Church of the Garden, and I got this wonderful text from my friend Tim, who had watched it, which is amazing. We were in the same time zone for once, so that was awesome. It's only that experience is only second to seeing U2 in the Sphere. So
it's a distant second, but still second.
Yeah. So it was great. Anyway, before we get to our topic for the day, which is Babylon, We're going to do 2 episodes on Babylon. And before we get there, we got an email, and to say that I'm behind and that we're behind on email is an understatement of colossal proportions. Anyway, we got an email in, and I thought, "Ooh, this is interesting." And it also tied into a little bit about what I was talking about in Long Beach this weekend. So this is an email from a listener. Greetings, Mike, Tim, and Seth. And I like now that Seth is simply included as part of that, and normally mentioned first. So we've been doing this thing on Instagram. I don't know if you've seen it, Tim, where we kind of go over Seth's day.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely hilarious. I always think, is that dumb or whatever? And people are like, no, we need more of this. So, and Seth now is addicted. Every time he comes up, he's like, Instagram? No, son, it's a week. That's all we're doing. Anyway, greetings, Mike, Tim, and Seth. I've been listening to Voxology regularly for at least a year. Thank you for doing that. Oh, and you know who I met somebody in Long Beach who had listened to every single episode we've ever done.
At the church?
At the church. And I was like, boy. So we prayed healing over that person like crazy. Anyway, I've been listening to Voxology regularly for at least a year. Appreciate both the content and the tone. Thank you for that. I've been a Bible believer for as long as I can remember. I've been to Bible college and even participated in ministry for a number of years. That being said, I'm in a season where I'm struggling to want to read the Bible for myself. I'm thankful for you guys and others in my life who have lately been shining a lot of light on parts of Scripture we have simply been reading wrongly and have been taught to understand wrongly up until now. I guess that is part of the reason why I'm struggling. How is it we have all missed so much all this time, and how can we enter into the Word now, knowing that we're probably still missing so much more than we realize? I thought that was a great question. In my earliest days as a Christian, I'm sorry to say that I based a lot of my self-esteem on the illusion that I was right about a lot of things Bible knowledge related. Boy, you are so not alone on that.
Yeah.
No doubt, this is to some extent the flip side of that coin now. How do I know anything? However, there is also the other icky feeling of being misled. And she clarifies, not lied to necessarily, as I don't think most people who taught us were ill-intended, but we were, I think, misled to a great extent.
Yeah.
The translation I'm most drawn to right now is the First Nations version by Terry Wildman, along with a team of others. I haven't read this, but this is like the second or third person who's recommended this, so I need to go out and snag it. Talk about people who have been lied to as a culture, but still found a way to hold on to faith in Jesus. Maybe that's why I'm drawn to it. Also, the Bible, makes a ton more sense in their context than it does in mine. So she's killing it right now. I mean, the Bible wasn't really written to comfortable people in a dominant culture with the goal of making them feel good about themselves.
Amen.
Amen. This is so great. Anyway, I just wonder if you have any thoughts on staying in the Word once you start to realize how little you really understand correctly. I'm kind of at a point when people read Scripture, I automatically think, it seems like that is really being taken out of context. Not that I know what the intended context is all the time, but I just kind of feel overwhelmed by how much we've gotten wrong. And I wonder why we are all just learning about so much of this stuff for the first time. Anyways, all that being said, thank you for what you guys are doing. I believe it's significant work. Thank you, dear listener, for emailing this in. And my goodness, we've circled around this topic, question, issue a whole lot. And I try to hold several things in tension. And this is all new for me because I'm the same kind of person that loves clarity and loves rightness and loves, having answers. And, I went through a whole apologetics phase and I went to graduate school in philosophy. I mean, I love, arguments for the existence of God and for the problem of evil and I love this stuff. This was like the root of my faith for so long. And so I'm totally sympathetic to, oh, well, crap, now what do we do?
Yeah.
And I know, man, Tim, I know you'll speak to this. too. You definitely. So on the one hand, we try to hold to the idea that there are parts of the Bible that are really clear, and that they're so clear even our kids can understand them. About the beauty of Jesus and the work of God in the world and whatever else. And we also realize that you could spend your whole life studying the text and never reach the bottom of it. And that's one of the things I greatly enjoy about the Bible, is that what I thought I knew, there are parts of that are often very true and accurate, but it's just deeper and more beautiful than I originally thought. It's the metaphor that Gambas first used about walking into a natural park. It's like you're standing in the gift shop of a natural park, and you're looking at the pictures of the mountains, the valleys, the wildflowers, the springs, the things you're about to see. And it's not that those are false images, but they're just nothing compared to the real thing. And I feel like that's been my experience in theology, that I was given images, and not all of them are false, but robbed of context and robbed of grandeur, they're just shallow representations of the real thing. And when you walk into the natural park and you see the things with your own eyes, it's tough to go back into the gift shop and settle for the hollow images. So if we could play with that metaphor, your experience is exactly the effect that the text is supposed to have. On the one hand, we're to be overwhelmed by the character and goodness and beauty of God and Jesus. And on the other hand, we're to be mindful that just like the nation of Israel and just like the first followers of Jesus and just like the early church, there is much we think we know that Jesus has yet to correct in us. And so if those earliest followers kept getting it wrong...
Yeah, the dudes that were walking around with them the whole time.
Yes, exactly. And then even after... So they've walked around with Jesus, they've seen him risen from the dead. And then Peter still is hanging on to his Jewish identity so much that God has to give him visions and direct him into Cornelius's house in the book of Acts, and then have him rebuked by Paul publicly in Antioch. And I mean, wow. So I'm not in the you can't know anything camp. That's not true. The Bible, like John ends the Gospel of John by saying, there are many things that could be said about Jesus, but I've written these that you might believe in him, and in so believing have eternal life. Or the beginning of Luke says, I've written you, Theophilus, so that you might know the truth of the things that you've been taught. So there is sure footing in our view here, absolutely. But the sure footing turns out to be a little different than the sure footing that the evangelical church kind of handed us in an inherited sort of cultural way.
Yeah.
And in my experiences, the footing is surer than I thought it was, but it's not as wide or broad as evangelical culture led me to believe. That there are so many other ways of seeing the text that make me recognize that my sureness in some of the cultural baggage that came along with evangelical culture was not based on surety or the text at all. It was rather based on me trying to be in control or not have to have faith or loving to be certain or whatever. And it wasn't actually based on the humbling of ourselves before the text. Makes sense so far, Timothy?
Yeah.
You jiving with all this? You want to add anything thus far?
I really wish we could do for lack of a better term, reconstruction non-fronts. Because I resonate really, like, I remember being kind of angry realizing how much misinformation or misaligned information I'd been given my whole life. And this podcast has been so much of that. Obviously, just like, this is what I was handed. This is what we found to be true, though, over here. But I think posturing yourself not in anger, but in just wonder and curiosity. And I found myself to be... that I'll reposture myself to be excited about the fact that I get to leave the gift shop and that what's outside is bigger and more wonderful. And so I'm like, I don't want to hold, while I still want to tear down the institutions that are still doing this to people, I don't posture myself in anger. I try not to posture myself in anger or regret or those kind of things. I just want to be like, you know what? I'm so excited that it's bigger and better than what I had been told. And I'm excited to just spend the rest of my life wandering in the national park, in the woods, and wondering at the mountains and wondering at the trees, and it makes me really, for me, I know this is taking this verse out of context, but that's the power that I can. But the be still and know that you're God. Sometimes I think about that in this conversation where it's just like, I'm just going to shut up for a little bit, and I'm going to wonder at how God reveals and what God is doing. And I'm not going to sit here and look at, as much as I do get in trouble for doom scrolling, and as much as Mark Driscoll and others come through my Instagram feed to piss me off, I try to be outside and just wonder at how much more we still get to learn and grow. And like you, I'm so glad that it's bigger. I like to know things for certain too, but I don't want to know everything. I want it to be bigger than my brain can comprehend. I want God to be massive. And I want God to be wonderful and mysterious and new. And I don't want it to be like, I figured it all out. Cool. Like, where do you go from there?
Yes, boy. And I think that, so Gombis will talk about having a critical mind without having a critical spirit. And that's a really hard thing to manage, because, like you say in your email, you're sitting there hearing things and now going, I'm not sure that's quite what it is or what it's saying, or I'm not sure you're using this text in a way that brings life or whatever. And so there's I think there are some ways, like, that I think about it. One of the ways I think about this is in terms of standing over the text as a master versus standing under the text as a receiver of a gift. And so for most of my life, I've stood over the text, trying to understand it, asking questions like, what does the Bible say about predestination? Or what does the Bible say about hell? I've employed it to defend certain positions. I've got arguments for why the Bible is historically reliable and all of those sorts of things. But in all of those examples, I kind of stand over the text and I'm rummaging through it for other purposes. Some of those purposes might be noble. But in all cases, I'm the one standing over it. The book is subject to my review. And one of the things that really changed, the bigger the Bible has gotten, is that the Bible becomes something that interrupts my ways of thinking and believing, my normal habits and patterns of relating, my normal social dynamics, that if you read it slowly and you stand under it, it becomes very disruptive in your life. And that's part of the reason why I trust that I'm reading it. When I'm doing that, I trust that I'm reading it well. That I'm receiving the Bible as it comes to me, not demanding how it should come to me. You know what I mean? It's the difference between saying, listen, I only want to read the Bible that I want. And what I want is a clear reference book that inspires me on some days and makes me feel good on others and comforts me when I'm down.
It's got little quips for every different emotional state you're in.
Exactly. And it hates the same people I do.
Right.
But what we get instead is this wild and vast and weird terrain of goats being boiled in their mother's milk and cities falling down at the sound of like trumpets.
Right.
And
people
Yahweh
being able to build a tower that's tall enough to threaten God.
Right. I mean, just so odd. It's so weird. And instead of being, instead of standing over the text saying, this is so dumb and so weird, I stand under it and say, there's a reason why this is in here, even if I don't know what it is. And I'm curious. It's the be curious but not judgmental. So many of us stand over the Bible in judgment, whereas I want to stand under the Bible in curiosity.
And therefore we stand over our fellow man in judgment and not in curiosity.
Totally. Exactly right. So, and this idea of standing under the Bible can totally be abused by people like Driscoll and others who will, claim to be the only avenue of righteous, hermeneutic, and I can be guilty of this too. I mean, this isn't. I don't critique anything that I haven't myself done. But if you can find a safe place where there's no other agenda than listening to the text and trying to experience and see the God that sits behind it, then I think it's appropriate at times for us to sit and be willing to sit in mystery and intention and questions and say, I'm assuming there's a reason this is in here, even if I don't understand what it is. And that is how I can even, go through the text these days, knowing that there's so much I don't know, but that reminder to me is thrilling rather than debilitating. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. The Bible's full of questions and lament and anger and all the emotions that we were kind of told were off limits. You find that the Bible's full of people with those things, and God is with them in all of that stuff, which is awesome. I was thinking this morning, my son asked me about the lady that ran for mayor in your town. And it kind of led to a
I'm glad our town had, is now known for that, for this crazy person.
Christian nationalism conversation. He's 11. And he just, was like, what does that mean? And I was explaining, I was like, it's important to understand what this means, though, because people expected this of Jesus. They expected him to be a nationalistic leader and to take power, and trying to explain that to an 11-year-old. And he was just like, okay, like he got it. He's like, this is opposite of that. And I started thinking about when I was working in the prison in LA about how we were, this is not a phrase we came up with, but we used it a lot with the cycles that humans get caught in. So it was like the idea that hurt people will hurt people, but healed people will heal people. And so at some point, these cycles have to get broken so that we can grow and mature and be what we're supposed to be and what we were meant to be. And so with like this listener's question, I just hope that our podcast encourages people to break those cycles, and it has to start somewhere, and then be the people that embrace the wonder and the mystery and the fullness of God and of Scripture and that kind of stuff. So I hope that it can turn into an encouraging place to be rather than a discouraging one.
Yeah.
Because I know that feeling where you're just like, you're holding the Bible in your hand. You're like, I don't know what to do with this anymore. Like, this is
right.
This is gibberish, and I've seen it harm a lot of people, and I don't know what to do with this. And all of a sudden you're like, this is a foreign text.
Yeah.
Despite growing up with it.
And whenever, exactly, or going to Bible college or whatever.
Right.
And whenever I get into that wilderness, one of the things I do is I just cut all the Bible off except for Jesus. And so one of the things we talked about this weekend in Long Beach was printing out Matthew 5, 6, and 7, the Sermon on the Mount, eliminating all paragraph breaks, chapter numbers, chapter headings, and verse numbers, and then just reading it out loud. It takes 20 minutes. Read it out loud 2 or 3 times a week. And then after that, pray the Lord's Prayer. And you'll find that the words of Jesus will become wonderfully intrusive.
Man, maybe we should do that and just post it on our website. Like just like a simple PDF of it. Just like
nice.
Just do it and then make it like so people can just grab it.
Yeah. That's a great idea, Timothy. And then you can sing it. And I think that would be amazing. Blessed are. Anyway, we're jumping into Revelation. So great question. I don't know if any of that helpful other than we just want to validate. Yes. That's a great thing. Let's talk about Revelation, guys. I'm going to spend half an hour introducing Babylon. And like Day of the Lord, Babylon is a motif. It starts out as a city, and then it becomes a motif, ladies and gentlemen, an archetype that gets used to describe other things. So, per usual, Revelation is in dialogue with some of the Roman imperial propaganda of its day and the entirety of the prophetic literature of the Old Testament. And if you don't, 2,000 years later, we don't recognize really either. And so we're going to meet another version of Babylon in the book of Revelation, but that carries with it freight from the Old Testament that causes us, like the day of the Lord, not to see Revelation picturing one final instance of Babylon, but rather to prepare the church for yet another instance of Babylon and the perpetual instances of Babylon that they live under and we live under even today. Does that make sense? So the question is, how, in America, what the goal of looking at Babylon is to say, how do I partner with the dynamics of Babylon? How am I complicit in the dynamics of Babylon today? And those dynamics are worthy then of the day of the Lord, the wrath of God being poured out on human structures and societies. And it may not look the way that it looked, 2,000 years ago, but I very much think God is still working and actively opposing the work of Babylon in the world. So let's talk about Babylon. After Genesis 3, so Genesis 1 and 2, human beings, garden, temple, they have priestly and kingly roles in the garden. In their humanity, they're simply to be image bearers. It's not something they do, it's an identity statement, so that everything they do was to image God. Of course, we meet a talking snake. We talked about the talking snake a couple episodes ago. And the humans, instead of imaging God over creation, now the humans listen to the serpent and almost image the serpent's will into creation. And as a result, everything gets inverted. Everything gets flipped upside down. And Paul will later describe this as, we worshiped and served created things rather than the Creator who is to be forever praised. And so what begins to happen is this inversion, it gets drawn out through cycles and patterns from Genesis 3 to Genesis 11. One of those cycles is the cycle of violence. So we instantly meet Cain and Abel. Cain murders Abel, and then the thing that God does, and it's so interesting here, God said to him, because Cain's like, well, now, if you're going to cause me to wander, I'm vulnerable now. People will come after me and murder me. And God says, not so. Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over. Then the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one who found him would kill him. So Cain went out from the Lord's presence and lived in the land of Nod, N-O-D, east of Eden. So moving eastward is this motif we're going to see all throughout the book of Genesis. We don't have time to explore, but it's always eastward. So he goes out and he lives in the land of Nod. Cain made love to his wife. She became pregnant, gave birth to Enoch. Cain was building a city, and he named it after his son Enoch. Now, Cain's city becomes an interesting focal point for several of the stories that follow. And we meet all these people that, the first poet, the first culture warrior, the first builder, right? We just meet these culture-making sort of people. One of the inhabitants that we meet of Cain's city is Lamech. Lamech, at one point, boasts in his ability to do vengeance and harm on others. Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, listen to me, wives of Lamech, hear my words. I killed a young man for wounding me, a young man for injuring me. If Cain will be avenged 7 times, Lamech will be avenged 77 times. The idea is that violence is increasing, and the desire for human retribution on each other is increasing. And many think when Jesus is asked by the disciples, hey, how many times should I forgive someone who's injured me? And Peter's like, 7, up to 7, which is like, what? and Jesus replies, 70 times 7 or 77 times. There's a textual variant there. He's riffing on the Lamech story. That's like, Lamech is saying, yeah, as many times as you can be hurt back, that's how many it will be. And Jesus is countering that with, well, as many times as you forgive, can forgive, that's how many times you should. But the picture we're given in Genesis is that violence is rippling. It starts out in a family. Yeah. Now it's present in a city. And it's growing in momentum. All right? So much so that when we encounter Genesis 6, and we've talked about the Nephilim and the sons of God, but there's a line in there about every human heart is inclined towards violence now. And the reason God decreates in Genesis through the flood is because of the violence in every human heart. So violence is this motif of that God keeps opposing as the humans move eastward away from Eden, okay? So the flood then is this cosmic reboot, this cosmic recreation, and it has all these parallels to Genesis 1 in terms of how the story plays out. Noah and his family gets the same commission that the Adam and the Eve did back in the day. And we soon realize, oh, they're imperfect too. God commits to them in their imperfection and says, I will never decreate again. Great. The culmination of all of these bad impulses in humanity shows up in the Tower of Babel story. So this is the crowning sort of achievement of human fallenness, all right? So I'm going to read it. That was all background to set up this. Okay. Humanity has grown in its violence. Humanity has grown in its ability to hurt each other. Humanity is growing in its technology and ambition. So the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, again, it's this motif of eastward, they found a plain in Shinar that's called, and you don't see this in English, but it's called Babylonia, and settled there. They said to each other, now, the commission God had given them was fill the earth and subdue it. So when it says that they moved so far and they stopped, that's a tiny way of saying, hey, humanity isn't fulfilling its original purpose. They said to each other, come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly. They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Now, bricks and mortar are going to be a theme we're going to read about. So just keep that phrase in mind. They're building a city with bricks and mortar. Then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we'll be scattered over the face of the earth. Now, let's talk about those three statements. We think the Hebrew word for tower here just literally means tower, but there's good reason to think that what they're referencing is something called a ziggurat. And there's archaeological evidence around that time and blah, 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 blah. But a ziggurat is really different than a pyramid. A ziggurat is an edifice that the whole purpose of the edifice is to hold a stairway, a really tall stairway. The ziggurat is kind of pyramid-ish shaped, but it's filled with dirt and debris. It's a solid structure. Usually there was a temple next to it, and the purpose of the staircase to the heavens was that the gods would come down and dwell in the temple. So the staircase wasn't for the human. This is a very important point. The staircase wasn't for the humans to walk up to be with the gods. The staircase was for the gods to come down and dwell among the humans. All right? So the purpose of a ziggurat was only a stairway, and that stairway was only for God's use. It was not for the use of the humans. Okay. So what they're trying to do here is they're trying to create sacred space for themselves. They're moving eastward. They're no longer part of Eden, where God dwelt among them uniquely. And now they're creating sacred space for themselves, make a name for themselves, and to stop scattering. So the purpose of the city was to build just this metropolis where we wouldn't have to fill the earth and subdue it. We would all reside right here, and God would come and dwell among us on our terms. That's the idea. Make sense?
Yeah.
So the Lord came down to see. Now, the reason God comes down is it means he comes down those stairs. That's the picture we're getting here. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, if as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down, that's why that language is used, and confuse their language so they will not understand each other. So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth. So now they're forcibly scattered, and they stopped building the city. That is why it is called Babel. Now, this is the only place this noun is called Babel. Everywhere else it's called Babylon. Okay, hundreds of other times it's called Babylon. Babel and Babylon rhyme with the Hebrew word for confusion. But this is the only place, and it's really obscuring the fact that this is Babylon. This is the first instance of a city named Babylon. And the thing that was true about Babylon was that it wanted to exalt itself. And so it declared its own sacred space. It stopped fulfilling the mandate God had set out for it to scatter and fill the earth. And that it was going to be a monument to human ambition and technological prowess.
Just like Vegas.
Well, the sphere is exactly, no. So does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
Perf. Perf, as my kids would say. That is why it is called Babylon, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there, the Lord scattered them over the face of the earth. Now, so Babylon is an ancient city, right? Yes, we just met it. It's an ancient city.
Yeah.
But Babylon becomes an archetype for evil human empires that suffer the same self-delusions of grandeur, ambition, violence, like the whole thing becomes wrapped up in the word Babylon. All right? So we go to Exodus.
It's so funny just after being in Vegas because...
That's it.
I know. We just had so many conversations about Vegas, but along these lines, it's just very ironic.
Isn't it? Don't you think?
Don't you think?
So Joseph comes to power in Egypt at a time period where lots of foreigners were migrating into Egypt. In fact, a lot of Semitic peoples were migrating into Egypt. And there was a group of people called the Hyksos that actually took over the rulership of Egypt for about 100 years. They were foreigners. And Egypt, because of famine elsewhere, was just swamped with foreign peoples. After that 100 years was over, all of the Semitic peoples get expelled, or the Hyksos anyway, get expelled from Egypt. And there becomes a very anti-Semitic people sentiment that settles over Egypt. And so when we get to the first part of Exodus, and we read there was a new king to whom Joseph meant nothing, we're talking about that post period of time where now Egypt was really suspicious of foreigners in their midst. There was a new king to whom Joseph meant nothing, who came to power in Egypt. Look, he said to his people, the Israelites have become far too numerous for us. Come, we must deal with them shrewdly, or they will become even more numerous, and if war breaks out, we'll join our enemies, fight us, and leave the country. So they put slave masters over them. Now, this is the first time we've encountered slavery, all right? And this phrase, slave masters, becomes really important in another story we're going to look at. So just mark that phrase, slave masters, down. So they put slave masters over them to oppress them with something called forced labor, slavery. And they built cities for Pharaoh. But the more they were oppressed, the more the Israelites multiplied and spread. So the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites and worked them ruthlessly. They made their lives bitter with harsh labor in brick and mortar, with all kinds of work in the field. So now we have a city, another city, being built with what? Bricks and mortar. Now, how do the biblical authors emphasize something?
They repeat it.
Well, they repeat it. So now we have another city being built with bricks and mortar. And of course, you'd instantly go, oh, we just met one of those.
Saw that, yeah.
Yeah, we just saw that. But now we've added the other element of forced labor, of taskmasters, of slave masters. So now we're just getting hints that Egypt has become a new form of Babylon. Because these cities are being built with forced labor, brick and mortar, for the self-glory of Egypt, right? They made their lives bitter with harsh labor in brick and mortar and with all kinds of work in the fields. In all their harsh labor, the Egyptians worked them ruthlessly. The Egyptians begin to murder the male babies. As we know, Moses kind of gets raised up out of this to deliver, Egypt or Israel from Egypt in the Exodus event. And so what happens is that singular picture of Babylon and its wickedness gets applied to Egypt, and we get a picture of Exodus, which is rescue from Babylon/Egypt. And that paradigm, the slavery to Babylon and the Exodus event out away from Egypt, Babylon, becomes a paradigm of salvation throughout the rest of the Bible. All right, so the first day of the Lord comes against Egypt. And we've talked about this, how the people get delivered and so on, so on, so on. But that was the first day of the Lord. Now, the thing that's really wacky is that Israel becomes a version of Babylon in their history too. So how do we know this? Well, we meet a king named Solomon. Solomon's reign starts like amazing. What God says, I'll give you anything you want. He says, I want to govern your people well. And he does, and everything Solomon does flourishes. But in 1 Kings 5, we read about the first fault line in Solomon's character. King Solomon conscripted laborers from all Israel, conscripted laborers, 30,000 men. And Adoniram was in charge of the forced labor, same word used in Exodus. And he appointed 3,300 taskmasters, same word as slave masters that we just read in Egypt, who supervised the project. So there's just, and again, it wouldn't jump out at you. You're just reading this in your English Bible and you're like, yeah, okay, so Solomon. But these words are being pulled forward from the Exodus story about taskmasters and forced laborers and all of this is now being done in service to the Israelite vision of, God's temple and the king's temple. In fact, we find that Solomon spends 7 years building the God's temple with slave labor and 14 years building his own palace. He accumulates 700 wives.
There's a lot right in there, right? Like 7 years building, but with using forced labor from other people, and then the double the time to build his own.
Yes.
So it's just packed full of.
Yes. And again, because I'm not familiar with the Hebrew that's sitting behind all of this, you would just miss the idea that these words are being pulled forward that are like blinking red lights telling you, oh, the same oppression that Egypt was doing to Israel is now doing to others. That same picture. And doing it in service of the temple of the Lord. And you're like, good Lord. And in fact, Solomon marries one of Pharaoh's daughters, and as a dowry, Pharaoh destroys one of the Israelite cities and then hands that just destroyed, ruined place to Solomon to do with as whatever he pleases as a dowry. It's insane. And so, not shockingly, a day of the Lord gets prophesied against Israel. And we looked at that when we introduced the concept in the book of Amos, for instance, and other places. And in the irony of ironies, who is used to discipline Israel? Well, one of the nations used is the nation of Babylon, where they go into exile. So Babylon, if you look at the arc of the Old Testament, Babylon is there at the very beginning, and Babylon is there at the very end. And Egypt manifests Babylonness, but so does Israel. And as a result, God uses the archetype to discipline them. And you just go, oh, okay. So the dynamics of Babylon are dynamics of exploitation and oppression and unhindered economic, growth. It's the dynamics of self-exaltation to define sacred space for themselves, their own pantheon of deities, and so on, right?
It's like
so we've got it. Well, it could be. What we then are going to see next episode is when we get to the book of Revelation and you begin to hear about the Babylon that is oppressing God's people there, you're going to see oppression and delusions of grandeur and the persecution of God's people and whatever else. So much of what's happening in Revelation, and one scholar put it this way, there's nothing new in the book.
Right.
The only new part is that...
What an important statement for that book in particular.
Yeah, seriously. The new part, but even the new part is prefigured.
Yeah.
In other parts of the Bible. The new part is that the Lion of Judah is a lamb that's been slain, and that's God's victory over the world. But, even in the book of Exodus, we meet about slain lambs. So it's like... So I don't know. I think what Revelation is doing over and over again is it's taking Old Testament motifs and critiquing them, or using them to critique Rome's arrogance. And this is what happens in Ezekiel when Ezekiel describes the fall of Tyre, or I think that's the city that sounds like Lucifer is falling, but it was actually an ancient king. I mean, there's just this beautiful. Not beautiful, but there is this poetic repetition of motifs that just keep gaining momentum until you hit the brick wall of Revelation 20, where we literally read about the fulfillment of Daniel 7, and then spoilers. 21 and 22, in Revelation 21 and 22, where we are back to the Garden of Eden, but now it's a city. So that there's this brick wall that all of this human momentum is going to run into.
So interesting. The email ties in so well to all this, because it literally is about like unlearning and relearning, or breaking those cycles, or whatever. Like you just see us get caught in the same things, and then it makes me think of that conversation with my son this morning, where it's like we are power hungry, and so we expect that a good God is going to give us the power so that we can reign over our enemies, but it's all through the lens of what we understand as good and whole, and powerful, and
totally.
Then God has to keep reminding us over and over again. No. I didn't come here to do that.
Yeah,
I am the Lamb who was slain. I won through defeat. Like
right. Yeah,
you just see it over and over and over. What a cycle we've been caught in.
And we're gonna meet people in Revelation 21 and 22 who are outside the city. And because the picture is like, and I have no idea what to make of this, but it's fascinating because there are some scholars who actually trace the sins of the seven churches through the evil dynamics of Babylon into those same people being excluded from new creation.
I mean, you can see that in other forms, so that doesn't seem like a far-fetched idea. Just like, I think a lot of times we read the sins of the father as a punishment for future generations, but I so often see it as passing down. Like we were learning so much about how we can pass down trauma, that trauma can be passed from one generation to another genetically without that newer generation actually experiencing trauma themselves. You can have PTSD and vicarious trauma from, like, it can be in your DNA. And so it's like, we were talking about the new Jim Crow in class the other day, and I was like, and I didn't say this in class, but I just always wonder how many things like intense racism or things like that can be handed down in our DNA. And so when I think about the sins of the father, sometimes I think about it that way. Like, it's not like you're being persecuted for your dad's sins, but sometimes you carry the weight of those sins in yourself and you re-inhabit them. And God's trying so hard to break these cycles of power over or persecute or whatever.
Yep.
And then you watch it just go further east from Eden. Like,
Yep. Exactly right, man. And so I think that, part of the role of parents in the healthiest sense, or part of the role of churches, is to provide speed bumps in the momentum of human awfulness. Just little places where those
rest stops.
Yeah, exactly. There's communal dynamics at least get interrupted and examined. And so what Revelation did for me, and still does, is it makes me investigate everything that we call normal. The normal ways of humanness, the normal ways of parenting, the normal ways of doing church. And it just makes me a little suspicious. Again, I don't want to have a critical spirit towards those things, but I want to constantly ask, where are the dynamics of capitalism at work in my heart, the dynamics of individualism, the dynamics of pornography and sexual exploitation at work.
All Babylonian.
All of it. Like even the Sodom and Gomorrah, the dynamics of Sodom and Gomorrah, and I get that text is used in really weird and awful debates, but there was a sense that the economic exploitation and the sexual exploitation were two things of the same coin. They weren't just two separate issues, and that's going back as far as you can in the Old Testament. I mean, the honesty of the Old Testament text around sexual issues and exploitation is just crazy. It's one of the reasons why I actually trust it. I'm in a graduate class right now looking at the way the kings of the ancient Near East wrote about themselves. And the Old Testament is by far, without a shadow of a doubt, the most critical document about its own rulers that has survived from the ancient Near East. There are so many ways that the covenant Yahweh makes is different. The character of Yahweh revealed is different. And you can't understand that until you hold it against the other things that were being said about the gods.
Yeah.
So it looks ugly to us when Yahweh says, I want you to eradicate the rest of the Nephilim in the promised land, because somehow the flood missed them. I mean, I have no idea, but okay, that sounds pretty awful.
Yeah.
And then you look at holy warfare in the other ancient Near Eastern texts that we have and cultures that we investigate, and you realize, oh my goodness, this is miles ahead of anything human beings were doing. The idea that every human, not just the king, was made in the image of God. I mean, and so I'm willing to let the Old Testament speak to its time using its thought forms without standing in judgment over it, going, well, how come it wasn't so enlightened as me? Because I've realized I'm not the enlightened one. For all of our humanity and enlightenment, look at what we do to each other.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same freaking story. So I don't know, man. When people say things like, hey, Israel really messed it up and the church has got it right. No, we're just Israel part 2, guys. And that's where I'm like, in some weird way, I'm hopeful. Because in the same way, God used all of that to bring about Jesus. I think he uses all of that to bring about Jesus still, right?
Yeah.
Like in some weird way.
There's always hope. I always think about that with, was it Mr. Rogers he would set his mom whenever they're watching a catastrophe or something in the news to always look for the people who are helping.
Yeah.
And that resonated. Or, it's another one of those things that got stuck in my craw, just kind of burrowed in there. And I try to do that. And those people don't get publicized because we like to look at the car crash and the carnage. But there are people out there that are always advocating for good. And I don't know. I just think in class we were talking about, we were reading an article on the environment, 2 opposing articles, one talking about the evils of plastic, but then one talking about the evils of cardboard and the things that we've exalted over plastic.
Oh, wow.
And so we were just sitting in the tension between those two and kind of talking about what do we do here? What is our role? What is our place? How do we discern what is helpful and what's not through whatever information we're given? But I started thinking about, I don't know if you saw Oppenheimer, but there was a conversation in there about
yet. I'm waiting till it comes out digitally.
Well, this is not a spoiler, even though you know what happens. There's a conversation about how there's a chance that when they set off the bomb, it'll ignite the atmosphere and destroy the entire planet. And so they're just kind of talking, kind of scientifically, nonchalantly about the fact that they could kill every human being just by turning this bomb on. I was like, man, And you read now that there's enough nuclear weapons on this planet to destroy the planet. We could destroy the planet Earth if we set off all of our bombs. And we have, islands of plastic the size of Texas floating around in our oceans. And so I was thinking about that, and the capabilities. Like, I have poison oak. It itches really bad. It drives me nuts. It's a little bush. Oil on a bush is torturing me. We're so fragile and we can break so easy. But at the same time, we have the capability and the knowledge and the power to destroy all of life. We can decreate on the highest level.
Yeah.
And so somewhere in the tension of that, we have to find the way to be so intentional and purposeful with how we navigate everything. Like I was thinking about the walking with the limp thing, and don't trust a person who doesn't walk with a limp. And I was thinking about a story that Shane Claiborne told about when he went out and served with Mother Teresa, and how she walked with a limp. It is because as they were given shoes, she would give all the best shoes to the children, and to people that needed them. She always wore shoes that didn't fit her feet, and her feet had become so malformed from wearing these tight constricting little things that she literally couldn't, she walked with a limp, and it was out of a spirit of service and a spirit of giving everything she could away to other people. And she had the power to do that. She had she was famous enough. She could have written bestsellers and become anything she wanted to, but I don't know. It's just the power that humanity has to kill and to rule over, and how much we want to utilize that power all the time.
Oh, that's Babel. Exactly. That's the story.
And so you see that, and we just find new ways of doing it.
Yeah.
But we paint it differently. That was part of the new Jim Crow conversation. It's like you go from slavery, we're like, no, bad, we're not going to do that anymore. But then we introduce segregated laws, Jim Crow laws, to do the same thing, but it looks nicer. And then we decide, no, that's not good. And then we have a new Jim Crow of prison systems and drugs. And I had my kids, while they're sitting there, research, what's the difference between cocaine and crack? And then what's the, you know what I mean? And so you build it, we do the same things. We just paint the houses nicer when we do it. We redline it or we do whatever, but we're doing the same things of power over and new dynamics. And then we anoint it, we baptize it and say, this is better.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Or even worse, we call it God's politics.
Yes.
This is the party of God. So yeah, we're all of that stuff, good Lord, it's coming, because Revelation pulls no punches. It's not like Revelation looks at Rome and says, yeah, there's just not a lot of Christians there, and that's the problem.
Right.
It critiques economics and the national idolatries and the national self-image of that thing. It's thorough.
You're talking about flags on the back of pickup trucks? Or
I don't know. Maybe they had those too. So anyway, friends, we got a lot. There is a lot coming at us. And again, the goal, whether you agree with where we go when we talk about these texts, or even the texts themselves, we're hearing from some of you, it's like, I just don't buy this. Great. That's not, the point isn't that. The point has become people who are curious by the text and curious about other people, and who walk with the humility to just go, man, I really think God is a lot bigger and more beautiful than we've been told. And so as we wander around this national park together, going, oh, isn't that cool? And oh, that's amazing. And oh, I didn't realize that's where that fit. That's the whole point of this. That's what we call reconstruction, is just being swallowed up again in enchantment and wonder and mystery. And we know enough to be confident that we're safe in the national park. It's where we belong, in the national park. It's beautiful there. And we can live in ways that align with life in the national park.
Absolutely.
But there's still just so much to it. Well, just how could we ever say that we've arrived? There's just never any arriving point. And if there's no arriving point for us, then how can we ever demand that from other people? And so churches at their best are places where we just sit and all look at the Grand Canyon together going, my Lord, this is amazing.
Well, how many times have you been with your kids on vacation or something? Deconstruction, reconstruction are really just repentance, right? You're just reorienting yourself.
At its best, that's exactly what it is. You're reorienting.
So how many times are you with your kids where you, like, when they're little and they're looking the wrong way and you have to take their shoulders and literally turn them to face to see what they're not seeing. And then they're like, oh, you see that sense of wonder or of overwhelmment or something like that. And it's like, we just all need to take a breath and allow our shoulders to be turned so we can reorient and go in the right direction, see correctly. And
so my stepdad and my mom would take my brother and I, they did it twice. We would take RV trips from Ohio out to the West and see Yosemite and Glacier and Yellowstone and Zion and Bryce and the Grand Canyon. But I was 16, my brother was 14. And we weren't interested in the national monuments. I was interested in whether or not the parks, the mobile home parks or the RV parks, whether or not they had pools.
Yeah.
Because pools meant they would have girls. And
whole different topic.
Speaking of awe and wonder. But they would get so frustrated. Yeah. Like, you are literally looking at some of the highest and best work that any artist could ever conceive.
Yeah.
And you're interested in swimming in chlorined water, right? Chlorinated water. And it's just like, that's exactly right.
It is.
So that gentle turning, like, hey, you're missing this great thing over here. I totally resonate with that, Tim. Totally. And so that's the point, is that maybe we're settling for chlorinated water when there's a lot of fresh air waiting for us. So
that a bunch of people have been peeing in.
Oh, I didn't realize how prevalent that was. I just didn't know. Now that I'm aware, I have a hard time swimming in public pools now. I just do. Anyway, that's another statement for another day. Dear listeners, thank you for tuning in. We love you guys. Appreciate you very much. See ya.
Thank you for listening to this conversation. Voxology is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is supported by listeners just like yourself. If you'd like to partner with us, you can do so at patreon.com/Voxology. You can also join the community and hang out and chat with us on the socials. Facebook.com/Voxology Podcast and on Instagram @Voxology. Thank you for walking the long road with us.